Season's greetings, everyone! One of the things I've always loved about the festive season has been the ballets like the Nutcracker and Swan Lake, and for a very long time I've actually had the idea for a little ballerina. So, with the festive season being here, it's time to finally bring that idea to life. Let's get started. Deciding to use Laguna as a base, I carefully removed her fins from her arms and from between her fingers. Since I wanted to give her point shoes, it's time to crack out the Dremel and hack off some toes. With the toes removed, I changed the piece of my Dremel to a sanding piece, using it to help shape and round off the rough edges, and then smooth them out. Starting with the lower section of her tutu, I used a panty pattern I own, cutting it out and sewing the seams and hemming the leg holes, leaving an opening in the back to make it easier to place on the door later. Taking some starry organza ribbon and light grey plain organza, I cut it into 4 strips, each one thinner than the previous one, before layering them together and sewing a running stitch through them. Since I'm making a pancake tutu, the narrower layers are on the bottom and the thicker ones are on top. Carefully gathering the organza together, I pin and sew it to the panties before flipping the panties right way out and testing the fit to make sure the pancake tutu stood up all on its own. Creating a petal-like shape, I cut it out of fabric, sewed them together and flipped them the right side out before spacing them out evenly across the top of the tutu to create a star look. Taking the upper part of my leotard pattern that I used for Sandy, I cut it out of fabric after sewing the side seams before hemming it. Using some gold embroidery thread, I used a braid stitch across the neckline to add a little bit of sparkle to the upper section before sewing it to the lower section of the tutu, adding a few little gold stars to accent. Mixing up some dark blue paint, I carefully painted the forearms and hands to give the illusion of gloves, using some gold around the bottom of the upper arm to give the illusion of them being hemmed, and adding a little band around the middle finger and the edges on the hand to finish the gloved look. After making some alterations to my simple flat shoe pattern, I cut it out of fabric and some card for the inner soles. Taking the cardboard soles, I used them to anchor the gold ribbon which I wrapped around her legs in a similar style to how point shoes are tied, before hemming and gluing down the fabric section of the shoes to the cardboard sole, finally gluing the fabric sole on top to give a neater, finished look. Since she can't stand on her own, I decided to make a custom stand for her using 2-part epoxy resin. I carefully measured out each part before carefully mixing them together, adding gold powder pigment before pouring the mixture into the mould that I created. While it was in the mould, I added some star glitters to give it a little bit more sparkle. And this is where it went wrong. Very, very wrong, and I had to act fast. The mould had started leaking and was not holding the resin. Luckily, I had a silicone mat underneath it. I quickly and carefully poured the resin back into the jugs, splitting it evenly between the two, and hoped for the best, that at least one of them would turn out a little bit like how I wanted. After 24 hours, I demoulded the 2 bases, carved off the rough edges before choosing between the 2. In the end, after asking some opinions from my household because I couldn't make up my mind, we decided on the one with a more even star distribution. Taking some gold wire, I created the base shape before wrapping some thinner gold wire tightly around it to give it a little more stability. Taking the chosen base and a hand drill and the wire wrapped stand, I carefully drilled a hole into the middle of the resin base as deep as I could before sliding the wire part all the way into it, using my pliers to help me push it down deep enough. After sealing the head with MSC, I start by using pastels to blush her cheeks and add a little colour to her lips. Taking my pencils, I carefully sketch out where I want her eyes to be, deciding on a closed eye, peaceful look. Then it was on to my nemesis, the eyebrows. It took me several tries to get them to look right and even, but I got there in the end. With the eyebrows conquered, I took a red pencil to add a little depth to her lips along the waterline. Before returning to the pastels to give her some eyeshadow. Once I'm happy with the progress, I seal it before starting to build up the pigments for her lash line and eyebrows, sealing when I wanted to save my progress or the pencils no longer are adding pigment. Because she has a closed eye look and I wanted natural lips, this time I didn't gloss anything, which is definitely a first for me. I decided very early on that I was going to tie her hair up into a traditional bun. However, I also wanted to add some wispy baby hairs, so I started by placing them first on the front of her face and hairline. I then glued the wefts down all the way around the hairline, doing 2 layers like this, before filling in the rest of the space with wefts just going straight across. Onto the styling. I started by braiding a braid on each side of her head before tying the remaining hair into a ponytail, before twisting it and wrapping it around into a bun. Then, taking the braids, I wrapped them around the bun and tied them in place. Feeling her hair was missing something, I took 3 pieces of gold wire and braided them together before cutting off the ends and wrapping it around her bun, using my pliers to shape it better and added a little hot glue to cover up the sharp ends. Deciding her hair needed an added touch of sparkle, I used a little PVA glue as it dries clear with some golden glitter and gently brushed it over her hair lightly. I also added 3 little star glitters to her braided gold band around her bun. Are you ready to meet her and see her finished outfit? Let me introduce you to Stella. I'm so happy with how she came out. I love her little peaceful and serene expression. It's the first time I've ever done proper mods and used my Dremel, so it was quite an adventure and I can't wait to do it again. I hope you all enjoyed Stella's journey and have a wonderful holiday season. Until next time! Tara. Tara. It's just a hanker. I'm making wefts.